The text wasn't intended for me. She had left her phone on the kitchen counter, screen up and unlocked as she hurried back upstairs to retrieve her work badge. I wasn't searching for anything. I was simply standing there, pouring coffee into my thermos, semi-conscious, with the morning news murmuring in the background. Her phone flashed. I looked at it just like you look at something that suddenly illuminates 3 feet from your hand. There was one notification, a name I knew, Denton Carr. Her supervisor at Whitfield and Associates. The content was visible without activating it. Hope your husband doesn't suspect the clueless you. See you tonight. I read it twice, then thrice. Then I put down my thermos deliberately, as I wasn't trusting my hands. By the time Renata returned downstairs, I was leaning against the counter with my coffee, seeming to pay attention to the morning news like nothing in the world had altered. She picked up her phone, didn't look at it, didn't falter, gave me a cheek kiss, and reminded me of our dinner at her parents' on Saturday. I replied, "I won't." She departed. I remained in my kitchen in Raleigh, North Carolina, with 44 years of existence within me and an unusual type of echo reverberating in my ears. The kind that doesn't originate from quietness. The kind that arises when you discover, in the span of a brief phrase, that someone has chosen to portray you as the fool in your own tale. I am Philip Hartwell. I am a certified public accountant. I have been handling taxes, audits, and financial assessments for 17 years. I manage a medium-sized firm on Glenwood Avenue. It employs 12 individuals, maintains reliable clients, and enjoys a reputation that took a decade to establish. In essence, I am a professional who uncovers the hidden aspects in figures. I do it daily. My spouse had been concealing something for months, and I hadn't discovered it. What lingered most in my mind after she departed was not the fury nor the sorrow. Those surfaced later. Initially, it was the query that eventually confronts every individual in my predicament. For how long had I remained oblivious as a husband? And then came the more crucial question: what measures would I adopt to rectify this situation? If you're intrigued by the narrative so far, click subscribe and share your thoughts below. Have you ever encountered an incident that left an indelible mark upon you, like seeing something you couldn't forget? Give it a thumbs up for others to discover stories similar to this one. Now, let's delve deeper. Renata and I crossed paths when we were 29 years old. She was employed as a marketing coordinator for a downtown commercial real estate firm, while I was in the 3rd year of my independent practice, operating from a modest 2-room office on Hillsborough Street with just one part-time helper, accompanied by more ambition than furnishings. Our paths crossed at a fundraiser for the Umstead Park Trail expansion thanks to a mutual acquaintance. At an occasion where people were attempting to appear unassumingly charitable while partaking in complimentary food, she stood out. What caught my attention initially wasn't her physical features, although she was undeniably attractive, but rather her unique ability to maintain direct eye contact, which many find difficult. Instead of engaging in idle conversation during the speech, she was the only individual who seemed genuinely interested in what the speaker had to say. Over the course of the event, we found ourselves standing near each other at the back of the room. Upon the conclusion of the speech, she leaned towards me and commented, "That man artfully rephrased a $4 million erosion issue as a trail enhancement opportunity. That's quite an impressive spin." My laughter echoed in response. We conversed for 2 hours, exchanged contact information, dined together 4 days later at a modest Italian restaurant on Glenwood Avenue, and by the time the bill arrived, I had already decided that she was someone I wished to get to know extensively. 3 years following our engagement, we exchanged vows in Fearington Village, situated south of Chapel Hill. 40 guests attended during late October, an ideal temperature for an outdoor ceremony. My mother found herself tearful throughout the event, while Renata's mother meticulously arranged the seating chart and boasted about the favorable weather. Over a span of 12 years, we constructed our life together. Renata ascended from coordinator to senior account manager, then 3 years ago, to her current position as Director of Client Strategy at Whitfield and Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm based in their warehouse district headquarters. The new role brought increased salary, a team of 6 underlings, and the introduction of a colleague named Denton Carr, who apparently struggled with maintaining professional and personal boundaries. I remained unaware of any misconduct for quite some time. Renata consistently worked long hours, but this had always been the case. Her ambition and proficiency in her job led me to attribute her extended workdays to the increased demands associated with her new directorship. When she initiated weekend phone calls and attended the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I didn't raise concerns. Looking back now, 3 months later, it is clear to me that I was oblivious to the signs of her possible deceit. Denton Carr's text referring to me as clueless husband suggested that this term was a familiar jest between them, indicating that she had used it before. This implied that there was a private characterization of me within their conversations, one that I failed to discern. The unaware man who returned home every evening. Over the course of that day, I pondered this revelation and decided against immediately addressing her about my suspicions. Instead of rushing to confront her for an explanation, I opted to collect information first due to my professional experience with people underestimating the importance of documentation. I've witnessed instances where one party disclosed too much too soon, weakened their position, and watched as the other side manipulated the narrative over 6 months. Such situations have led to losses of homes, savings, and reputation. If Renata was indeed involved with Denton Carr, I needed a clear understanding of the extent. I needed to assess the situation thoroughly before showing my hand. So instead of demanding answers, I took the methodical route, beginning my investigation that evening when she returned home earlier than normal, in a good mood, and sharing stories about a successful client presentation. She even prepared pasta for me. At the kitchen table, we shared a meal and she inquired about my day, recounting a quarterly audit I was concluding for a factory in Durham as a response. Throughout our conversation, I observed her meticulously, not with suspicion but with curiosity, as if encountering something familiar yet novel. There was nothing extraordinary to observe. She was radiant, attentive, humorous. She reached out to my hand twice during dinner. Post-dinner, we turned on the TV, and she dozed off against me on the couch. Whether she was an exceptional actress or managed to isolate whatever was unfolding with Denton Carr so flawlessly that it didn't reflect on her facial expressions when she was with me remained a question. I pondered this for quite some time after she retired for the night. For the subsequent 3 weeks, I pursued 3 actions. Initially, I discreetly consulted a family lawyer named Patricia Ewan, based in an office off Six Forks Road, not to initiate any legal proceedings, but to gather information. To clarify the legal aspects, necessary documents, North Carolina laws regarding marital assets, and grounds for divorce, Patricia provided clear guidance. She advised against confronting my wife during the information-gathering phase, which I was already avoiding. Subsequently, I engaged a private investigator, Gregory Oakes, a former Raleigh police detective running his firm for 11 years, based near the Beltline. At 55, Gregory was meticulous, efficient, and seemed unfazed by surprises. Within a week, he verified their relationship. Renata and Denton Carr were frequently meeting at a Marriott on Capitol Boulevard and occasionally at a bar in the Glenwood South neighborhood. He had visual evidence, dates, and an established pattern. The affair had been ongoing for around 7 months. Third, I scrutinized our finances as meticulously as my client work, uncovering an unexpected revelation. Renata had a personal savings account that was familiar to me. Her income, her earnings, separate from ours. She'd always managed it independently, a practice I hadn't questioned before. As 2 professionals with independent incomes, we maintained our financial identities within our shared life, a sign of health and normality. However, what I discovered was that for the past 8 months, she had been transferring funds from this account to an unrecognized one at another bank. The transfers were minor, $800 here, $1,200 there, nothing substantial enough to warrant concern. Over 8 months, a total of approximately $19,000 moved. I pondered over that sum for 3 days before its significance became clear. She wasn't amassing a covert savings for trivial purposes. Instead, she was assembling a runway, a financial buffer unbeknownst to me, implying she had been plotting an exit from our relationship, orchestrating it over several months. The affair hadn't been a sudden escalation. It had been a deliberate choice that she'd been carrying for long enough to start laying the groundwork for her departure. Upon reevaluation, the husband's oblivious text carried a different weight due to her forethought. For 7 months, while we sat at this kitchen table and I filed tax returns, managed client audits, and returned home each evening to the same woman, she had been preparing for an event I was unaware of. I pondered challenging her then. I mulled it over every morning for a week. However, I didn't. Instead, I planned. Gregory Oakes ensured his documentation, photographs, timestamps, and a flawless trail of evidence were in order, which Patricia Ewan affirmed as solid and admissible. Patricia started outlining the legal structure. I consulted with my financial advisor, Dana Korsh, whom I have collaborated with for 8 years, to discreetly reorganize certain personal assets that were independent, such as premarital accounts and business equity. These were properly documented and safeguarded. I didn't touch anything shared. I didn't conceal what was mutual. I simply ensured that what was mine was undeniably, legally, evidently mine. Then I waited. Renata had informed me the preceding month that her company was hosting an end-of-quarter gathering on a Friday evening in the city, a rooftop event at one of the warehouse's district venues. She'd spoken about it casually, as she often did regarding work-related matters. Quickly, without much information, glancing away before focus was attained. I expressed that it sounded pleasant and asked if spouses were welcome. She said it was more of a team event, but she'd verify. She didn't verify, or if she did, informed me the response was negative. During the event's evening, I was aware, thanks to Gregory's tracking, that Denton Carr had reserved a room at the Capitol Boulevard Marriott. I did not pursue her. Let me emphasize that. Neither did I visit the Marriott nor confront her there. That wasn't the climactic moment I had been preparing for. Instead, the moment I had been preparing for occurred on a Saturday morning, 5 days hence, when Renata overslept while I rose at 6. Over the subsequent 3 hours, I executed my long-planned actions. I contacted a moving company, a small, discreet operation from Garner that Gregory had suggested, and arranged for their arrival at 9. For the past 3 weeks, I had quietly transferred my most private belongings to my firm's downtown storage area. This included documents, my father's watch collection, as well as certain furniture pieces that had been in our home since we moved in. Remaining and relocated on that Saturday morning were Renata's belongings, not harmed or defaced in any way. Meticulously, expertly, swiftly moved, the result of 3 months of meticulous planning. By 9:45, our shared bedroom was now a guest room. Her garments, personal items, and vanity were moved with remarkable precision to the guest room at the hall's end. Her office remained untouched, as did the kitchen. The only items in the master bedroom, along with freshly laundered guest linens, were a folder on the bed containing photos taken by Gregory Oakes, a printout of her hidden financial records for 8 months, a divorce initiation confirmation letter from Patricia Ewan's office, and a personal note from me. 1. Discovered the text on a Tuesday in October's morn. 2. Spent 3 months dissecting and comprehending its contents. 3. Wish you understand that my silence was out of respect, not fury. 4. The movers departed by 10 a.m. Renata descended at 10:17. 5. I sat at the kitchen table with coffee and laptop, tending to a client file. 6. Heard her ascending footsteps in the upper hallway, stopped, then approached our shared bedroom. 7. The door opened, followed by an extended pause, then an unexpected sound. 8. Not a scream or fury, but a sound of air exiting a room. 9. Her downward steps echoed differently than her ascent, slower, unstable. 10. Emerged in the kitchen doorway, Renata made an appearance I hadn't seen in our 12-year relationship. She crumpled not from weeping, but from a look that mirrored the sudden awareness of someone who has discovered their strategy, meticulously executed with assurance, had been anticipated and thwarted. She didn't sit. She fell to the kitchen floor, her legs giving way against the door frame. In her hands was a folder as she sobbed, tears that sounded like they were close to physical agony. "Philip," she murmured, a voice I barely recognized. I shut my laptop. "I'm aware," I replied simply. That was all. She inquired about the duration of my awareness. I disclosed it, since the Tuesday in October when Denton Carr's text materialized on her unsecured phone on the kitchen counter. The look on her face when I mentioned October, upon realizing that I had known about it for 3 months without disclosing anything, left an indelible mark. It wasn't simply guilt. It was more like the feeling of a person who thought they comprehended their surroundings and then was told those surroundings were fundamentally different. "You didn't tell me," she said. "Why not?" I met her gaze squarely. I hadn't spoken because I wanted to grasp the whole situation before opening my mouth. "That's how I operate, Renata. You should know that by now." She glanced at the folder in her hands, our account. "Yes, how did you come across it?" In much the same way I uncover everything else, I scrutinized the figures. I hesitated. 8 months, Renata. You've been preparing for this for at least 8 months. That alters what this is. That wasn't an oversight they failed to correct, but a choice they implemented while dining with their spouse every night. She didn't dispute this, suggesting she had already reconciled with the portrayal sometime within the past 8 months. "Who else is aware?" she inquired. "My lawyer, the private investigator I engaged, and Dana regarding my business holdings." Upon reflection, I remained silent. Your parents are unaware as well. Only what you choose to disclose beyond that is determined by you. She glanced up. You contracted a private investigator. I required evidence. Indeed, I responded without a hint of resentment, almost with an air of understanding. You're the most meticulous individual I've ever encountered. And you told Denton Carr that I was oblivious. The silence following this statement was profound. In the ensuing weeks, she attempted to reinterpret events. I don't say that to condemn her, she clarified, but to acknowledge her actions. She stated that our marriage had been remote for 2 consecutive years, attributing this to my constant engrossment in work. She felt more like a neighbor than a partner, living beside me rather than with me. Despite her attempts to express concerns, she claimed I failed to comprehend her signals. While some of what she said held merit, I acknowledged my flaws as a husband. Often, my focus was excessively on my job, which wasn't fair to her. There were periods when I devoted more effort to the firm than to the person who shared my life. I recall instances where she shared her day, yet my mind was preoccupied with resolving a client's financial issues while giving half-hearted responses. This is not something I am proud of. I have spent much time reflecting upon it in recent months. I informed her about what I overheard and made clear that it didn't alter her decisions. You could have spoken to me about it, I expressed. You could have said, Philip, this isn't working anymore, I'm not content, something needs to change. I would have paid attention. I would have attempted to help. You had 12 years for that conversation with me. I allowed the words to hang in the air. Rather, you established a secret account, met another man at hotels on Capitol Boulevard, and portrayed me as your oblivious spouse. Such actions aren't those of someone who exhausted all other options. They are the acts of someone who decided first and then made the decision again. She couldn't refute that. What lingered with me most was the secret account above anything else. Because the affair, despite its pain, I could empathize with on a human level. People often make poor decisions when they feel disconnected, when something within them yearns for warmth from an unsuitable source. Her secret account wasn't merely a mistake. It was a calculated deception, sustained night after night, as she made hidden transfers while I remained oblivious and faithful. She was accumulating resources for a life she was planning, unbeknownst to me, while I continued my daily routine of going to work and returning home. The act of such prolonged deceit is far removed from a momentary lapse in judgment. Instead, it signified a commitment, a signal that the rift between us had grown so wide that she felt no need to consult me on whether we could try to mend our relationship. Denton Carr reached out to me unexpectedly. About a fortnight post my divorce filing, Renata temporarily resided with her college roommate in North Hills, seeking her future course. Suddenly, my unrecognized phone rang, and a man named Denton Carr introduced himself upon answering. In my office at 11, I leaned back, responding, "Talk." He sounded uneasy before uttering anything substantial. A man who thrives on power, he felt out of his depth when the scales tipped. He expressed his desire to inform me that him and Renata were truthful with each other. He assured me that he hadn't intended to meddle in any marriage. He wished for no personal ill feelings from my side. I listened attentively, without interrupting his discourse. On concluding our conversation, I told Denton, your text message labeling me as Renata's clueless husband is unnecessary. I request you to be more cautious with your words in the future." Another pause ensued. "In North Carolina," I added, "the discovery process can be extensive. If you're curious if your communications, texts, emails, call records could potentially be included in court documents during a contested divorce, they could be." He ended the call not long after. The divorce proceedings lasted 8 months, not due to any dramatic confrontation. Renata didn't challenge the financial aspect, partly because her own separate account provided minimal grounds, and partly because I think she acknowledged that her actions were difficult to defend. For about a year, she concealed the fact she was accumulating an exit fund from me while we continued interactions. Her lawyer cautioned her that such deception wouldn't appeal to a judge. We evenly divided our possessions. The house was sold, and the profit shared based on each of our contributions over 12 years as meticulously recorded by Patricia Ewan. My business assets, fully documented as mine, remained mine. What I had been unaware of, her secret savings account, became a topic for negotiation in the settlement. She retained it, but we both understood its significance. On the day the paperwork was finalized, I sat in Patricia Ewan's conference room on Six Forks Road and signed the last pages with a pen bearing my firm's logo. Patricia extended her hand, and I shook it. Upon returning to my office, my longtime assistant Brenda looked up and asked, "How are you?" To which I replied, "I'm okay." Renata and Denton Carr indeed parted ways. The information didn't come from her personally, but through a mutual acquaintance within Whitfield and Associates. It seems their relationship couldn't endure public scrutiny. Matters hidden in confidential texts and covert meetings at Capitol Boulevard don't always align with reality. I wasn't astonished, nor content. I merely observed the situation, much like noting the weather current, then passed. What struck me more was her choice of words clueless. This word has lingered in my mind more than any other aspect of this ordeal because she was correct about her usage of it. She was simply mistaken about what it applied to. I was indeed clueless regarding the affair, yes. I overlooked the indications that I now, with hindsight, can clearly discern. I stood in my own kitchen, glancing at an unanswered text message I had overlooked on the countertop for some time. However, I wasn't oblivious about how to respond to it. Emotion doesn't dictate my actions. Instead, information does. I spent 12 years constructing a business based on the belief that numbers reveal everything if given enough time to speak. I applied this methodology even in addressing the most devastating event in my personal life, and it functioned exactly as intended. Secrets are exposed. The entire situation is comprehended before any action is taken. Then, moves are made with calmness, nothing that could potentially be used against me. After a span of 3 months, on one Saturday morning, she descended the stairs and knelt in the kitchen doorway. Everything I had carefully orchestrated was already set in motion. I feel compelled to be truthful since stories often portray one individual as the clear antagonist and another as an absolute innocent. A depiction I believe contradicts real-life complexities. In essence, I was a workaholic. Yes, I acknowledge that. For years, Renata sat opposite me at this very table, while my mind was elsewhere, engrossed in some audit, and I was aware of it. I can't definitively say if the deterioration of our marriage was due to this. The emotions Renata harbored in the months preceding Denton Carr's entry into her professional sphere remain unclear to me. However, I won't claim to be an ideal husband who was unexpectedly betrayed by an unfaithful wife. Instead, I will emphasize that if there are suspicions of marital issues, it's crucial to investigate thoroughly before taking action. You don't extend courtesy to the other person because they might deserve it, but rather to act from an informed perspective instead of being taken aback. Being surprised can lead you to say things that undermine your position. Gathering evidence provides freedom. I didn't shout or made accusations without proof. I didn't provide Renata or Denton Carr a chance to twist the events and portray themselves as victims of an erratic husband. I collected what was necessary. I safeguarded what I had built. On a Saturday morning in Raleigh, North Carolina, I ensured no one could feign ignorance about the situation unfolding within my home. Now, I'm back in the master bedroom, reclaiming it. The house was sold 6 months ago, and I now reside in a condo in the North Hills area, a smaller, quieter place with an office tailored to my preferences, and a kitchen where I cook more frequently than when I was attempting to save a marriage from slow collapse. My dad frequently said, "Financial books eventually equalize, Philip. Your task is to ensure you're on the beneficial side when they do." He was an accountant, now retired, living in Cary with my mom and their pet, tending a garden with the same careful precision he once applied to his profession. I contacted him a few days after discovering the text before discussing it or acting upon it. I informed him about the situation. He remained silent for a moment before responding. "What's your gut feeling?" I replied, to be patient to comprehend the entire scenario first. "Excellent," he said. "That's the correct instinct. Stick with it." I followed his advice. The accounts eventually balanced, taking 8 months to settle, but they evened out in the end. There's a woman I've been seeing for 2 months now. Her name is Nora. She works at WakeMed Hospital Administration and possesses a laugh that doesn't need permission. We crossed paths at a colleague's dinner party in Cameron Village, a type of social gathering I had avoided after my divorce, but later resumed attending when I realized that solitude is merely a temporary solution. Nora isn't the central figure of this narrative yet. Her role remains undefined. However, I can confirm she is truthful, blunt, and intolerant of anything that squanders her time or undermines her intelligence. She seeks genuine answers rather than empty chatter. When she speaks, it carries weight. This much is sufficient for now. The message on the kitchen counter, "I hope your oblivious husband doesn't get suspicious," was intended as a private code between two individuals sharing a secret at my expense. a jest between them about the man who was preoccupied with his spreadsheets and quarterly reports, unaware of the goings-on in his own life. Here's what I understand about secrets. 1. They are often shared as a joke or private communication between two people. 2. They can be at someone else's expense. 3. They can be used to disguise what is truly happening in one's life. It shows no preference for who discovers it, nor allegiance to any particular side. Sitting in text messages, bank statements, GPS logs, photos, and other such places, it waits patiently for someone to scrutinize it directly rather than indirectly. I scrutinized it thoroughly, and when I finished, I knew precisely what action was required. My name is Philip Hartwell. I'm a certified public accountant based in Raleigh, North Carolina. I uncover hidden numbers. The most crucial audit I ever performed wasn't for a client, but for myself. When the accounts finally aligned, they revealed something unexpected. My worth exceeded what I thought when I was striving to maintain something that had already been determined without my input. Learning this truth at 44 isn't insignificant. Some people never learn it.